Hello, bonsoir, and welcome to the Get French Football News Show. I'm your host, Nathan Staples, and joining me this week are Eric Devine and our editor-in-chief, Christian Yuri. It's the first week in March, which means that the finish line is just beginning to appear on the horizon as teams prepare for the final run of games that could salvage or doom their seasons. Who has improved just at the right time and who has sunk themselves into a hole? We'll take a look at that after the latest news with Eric.
Thanks, Nathan. Caen and Monaco got the league on weekend off to a scintillating start as Thomas Lemar marked his return to the Stade Michel Dornano with a stunning free kick, only for Julien Ferre's penalty to draw the team's level, with Ali Yaya's goal giving the visitors the lead. Christian Kouakou, the winter arrival, came on late and scored an equalizer to leave the match between the two European contenders level at 2-2 on Friday evening. Saturday's opening match was a dull 0-0 draw between Paris Saint-Germain and visiting Montpellier, the champions and leaders playing a highly rotated side ahead of Wednesday's match against Chelsea in the Champions League. 0-0 draws were also the order of the day in the multiplex, as Saint-Etienne's trip to Angers ended scoreless, as did Lorient's trip to Bastia, all results doing no sides any real favors. For Lille, however, results were a little bit more positive, as two of their loanees were both on the score sheet. Ronnie Lopez scoring a free kick from distance midway through the second half before Adair got his second since arriving from Swansea in injury time to give Les Dogs a 2-0 win over visiting Reims. Elsewhere in the multiplex, Nice welcomed the return of Hatem Ben Arfa, although only as a substitute, in their 2-1 victory over Troyes, a result which gives their European ambitions quite the boost. Gazlek Ajaccio battled back for a late goal away to Bordeaux, cancelling out Cheick Diabate's penalty in a result that ended 1-1, giving the Corsicans some hope away from a loss by Guingamp. On Sunday's matches, Toulouse once again dropped points from winning position, as Wissam Ben Yedder's goal was cancelled out by a late equalizer from Stephen Fletcher at the Velodrome, the host's home woes continuing. Sunday's evening match saw a Breton derby as host Rennes ran out decisive 4-1 winners over Nantes, a result which breaks Les Canaries' undefeated streak and marked a hat trick for youngster Ousmane Dembele, with scouts from teams such as Tottenham and Barcelona in the crowd. Lyon, however, went one better against another Breton side, winning 5-1 at the Stade des Lumières. Alexander Lacazette notching a brace, and Rachid Ghazal adding a goal and 2 assists to mark Legon's fifth win in 6 matches in the league, a result which sees them once again take sole possession of third place, ahead of their trip to Rennes on Sunday. In Ligue 2, Dijon won away to Evian, and Nancy won at home against Red Star, a result that sees the two retain the top places, with Le Havre's win over Valenciennes giving them a chance to pull within 1 point of the Parisians for the third promotion place. That's all the news for now. Over to you, Nathan.
Thank you, Eric. And remember, for all your latest news within the French football world, head on over to our website at www.getfootballnewsfrance.com and follow us on Twitter at GFFN. We have been talking ever so slightly about the subject for the past few weeks, but with a lot of things already tied up for Paris Saint-Germain, their attention now turns to the game in midweek against Chelsea in the Champions League. They lead 2-1 in a finely balanced game. But, Christian, is this their biggest game of the season so far?
Nathan, I think this is undoubtedly Paris Saint-Germain's biggest game of the season. We have seen them falter a little bit in the league in the last few weeks. We've seen them now only win 1 of their last 4 Ligue 1 matches, which is quite a surprising statistic, I think, certainly if you're a Paris Saint-Germain fan this season. But that is now all very much irrelevant. What's important now is that match on Wednesday evening in London, because Laurent Blanc has said it, and so have many of the players. Their season as a club comes down to, in terms of how successful it is, whether or not they now break that quarter-final duck, so to speak, which has always been the point in which they have quit the Champions League, at least since QSI have come in. So this is a really important, I think you can say that actually maybe this game is the first game of the Paris Saint-Germain season.
Eric, I mean, the complexion of this tie to their season has changed dramatically over the last couple of weeks as Paris Saint-Germain obviously lost their unbeaten streak in the league. Like we say, they've got that 2-1 lead, but that's such a slender lead in the Champions League, especially with that away goal for Chelsea, isn't it?
Yeah, and we've seen PSG be undone by away goals in the past. In fact, against Chelsea 2 years ago, they were undone by they lost on away goals after having won last year. Yeah, it certainly is a shame that injuries have crept up on PSG in this way. I mean, Matuidi looks set to start, but his fitness is still not 100%. He's a bit of a doubt. Marco Verratti is not going to start, is the latest, and may not feature at all, which leaves Blanc the choice of Pastore or Rabiot in midfield, neither of whom is an ideal option in a match of this caliber. Pastore has performed well in the past, but personally, if it were me, I wouldn't want to be trusting a match so important to the club in the hands of Rabiot, talented though he may be. It's interesting that it's disappointing that it comes down to this, because we saw PSG be hogtied by injuries against Barcelona last year, but you really have to call into question the nature of these injuries. I think that Matuidi in particular has been really overused by Blanc over the course of the season, and you have to question whether or not they could have rotated the squad a little bit more in the last 6 weeks or so. Since the beginning of the new year, PSG have been playing quite a few matches in the Coupe de la Ligue and in the Coupe de France as well. And I have to question the manager's rotation policy, given that these are both muscular injuries. Are these two players being simply overused? Because in addition to their commitments for the club, they're also important players for their national team, and they've played really quite a few matches this season, and you have to wonder whether PSG couldn't have scraped results a little bit more with the likes of Rabiot, Stambouli, and Pastore being used in midfield. Now, I know Pastore has been injured, but the fact is, at this point, do you really have to take the bigger picture here and call into question Blanc's use of the pair throughout the season, now that they're unavailable or not at full fitness when he needs them most?
And just following on really from that, Christian, we've mentioned the centre midfield being an issue for the last few games, with possibly Matuidi and Verratti. Maybe they may take part, but they might not be fully fit. Is that a real worry for Blanc heading into this one in what will probably be a very close game?
I think Eric's been a bit harsh on Laurent Blanc there about not rotating enough. I think Paris Saint-Germain are one of the few clubs in this stage of the Champions League who have rotated to such an extent, simply because the nature of competition in Ligue 1 is such that actually they are able to play a Rabiot or Stambouli, and I don't have the exact sort of appearance figures in front of me, but I imagine that 4 squad players, they probably get more game time than any other individuals within Europe. So I think, I hate to use the term luck, and of course, as Eric points out, they are both muscular injuries, these injuries to Blaise Matuidi and Marco Verratti, so there's always room to have a look at the fitness department, room to look at the physios, etc., what's gone on there, but I don't think now is the time to do that. I think Laurent Blanc has to accept the squad that he has available to him. It's my understanding that Marco Verratti really, really wants to play on Wednesday, so I expect we'll see him a little bit. Also remember that potentially Laurent Blanc is simply playing games here. It might very well be the case that Blaise Matuidi is fit. It's a tactic that Blanc has used in terms of pretending players are more injured than they are just before the game, and then sort of spring them out at 7:45 on Wednesday. I wouldn't be too surprised to see one of Matuidi or Verratti start. But as I said, they can have an inquiry about why these injuries have occurred at a later point. I think Laurent Blanc now needs to instill faith in the midfield three that he's going to use. I very much hope that from a preparation point of view, he's already told those 3 individuals and that they've been working together as a unit, because, Nathan, I think your concerns are certainly fair when we talk about perhaps other midfield threes, alternative midfield threes, apart from the Verratti, Motta, Matuidi trio, which has worked so well for Paris Saint-Germain in recent seasons. There's always a little bit of a lack of cohesion. when Stambouli and particularly Rabiot seem to get involved with the likes of Motta. So it's important that whatever the midfield three is on Wednesday, that they play together as much as they can leading up to the fixture. I don't think that Paris Saint-Germain will be able to use this as an excuse, however, if they fail to beat Chelsea or go through to the next round this week.
No, but and to mention the injuries they've had in that centre midfield, I think the unlucky timing of having Pastore not quite fully fit has also impacted that. He's probably the best made replacement for someone like Matuidi, but it also is a shining indictment on the likes of signing someone like Stambouli, who's probably not quite at that level that they need. And I'm not fully sold on Rabiot yet, but that's another conversation for another time, really. Eric, Chelsea heading into this game again have those injury worries. It seems like John Terry's definitely out, as well as obviously Kurt Zouma with his knee injury, and Diego Costa might be fit. He missed the game at the weekend, but will that give Paris Saint-Germain a little bit of hope, as much as possibly the injuries to the centre midfield might give the English champions a bit of light in the end of the tunnel?
I think it depends how they set up. We saw in the first leg that they had used Lucas Moura, I think to great effect, his pace, buzzing about and really preventing Chelsea's fullbacks from getting involved in any sort of meaningful attacking sense. So I'd like to see him start again ahead of Cavani, and if they can have the front line of Ibrahimovic, Di Maria, and Lucas, I think that they do have a chance to trouble Chelsea quite a bit. And remember, if they can score one goal early on in the match and be aggressive and get on the front foot early on, I think they'll give Chelsea a lot to think about, because with or without Costa fit, I don't see that Chelsea have an ability to score 2 goals against this PSG defense. I think that if PSG can come out aggressively and score the opener, the tie is all but over. However, the fact that a 1-0 win will take Chelsea through is what really gives me pause heading into Wednesday's match. I think that given how resolutely Chelsea did defend in the first leg of this, we can see that they have the resolute tools to play for a 1-0 win. And I worry that PSG can show the adaptability and drive from midfield to put in a complete attacking performance to get the goal that I feel that they need to win the tie. I don't see a scoreless draw being in the cards, given the weapons that both these teams have going forward.
Christian, many of the sort of English media will be analysing PSG's recent form, really, heading into the one, and it was another slightly disappointing performance on Saturday. Again, with the importance of this game, really, do you think that this really could be a little bit too much for a Paris Saint-Germain side that's maybe teetering a little bit, or do you think this could be the exact kind of game that they need to be up for and going for?
No, Nathan, I don't think that anyone should be overly worried. I think you're right. I think lazy journalism will look at those last 4 Ligue 1 games and sort of be full of optimistic headlines for Chelsea in the English press tomorrow. But this is a time for Paris Saint-Germain to stand up and be counted. This is no longer a squad which is inexperienced vis-a-vis this competition. This is a squad which in the main has remained the same for the last 2-3 years and has fought consecutively on big European nights. This is time for them to deliver. I think they believe very strongly that they can deliver, and I don't think it helps at least from our side to put any pressure on Paris Saint-Germain. Maybe it's time to try something a little different if these injuries to Matuidi and Verratti are to be taken as read. Maybe Blanc needs to go to a 4-2-3-1 and put David Luiz alongside the likes of Motta. That allows Pastore to be in his favourite position if he is fully fit, and then Di Maria, Lucas, and Ibrahimovic up top. I mean, I think that from another point of view looks good. It also allows Paris Saint-Germain to tell Chelsea to come at them, with those 2 deep-lying midfield players, and see what they can do on the counter. And I think a attacking midfield three of Pastore, Di Maria, and Lucas would be very, very dangerous, especially on the counter at Stamford Bridge. But I don't think that we should be worried, at least from a French football point of view. I think Paris Saint-Germain have shown domestically and in Europe this season that they are a cut above what they have been in previous years. And Chelsea, in the opposite sense, have shown that they've had a very difficult first half of the season and are now slowly coming back to some form of form with Gus Hiddink. But really, pound for pound, Paris Saint-Germain should go through on Wednesday.
Well, mentioning that they should really go through, Eric, I've got an interesting question for you. I'm assuming that, unfortunately, Paris Saint-Germain failed to beat Chelsea in midweek. What are the after effects of that move? Is that their season, in a sense, maybe slightly hit with a downer, with the league pretty much tied up and the cups at least looking towards the final stage?
I think you have to say yes. Given, again, the Champions League from the round of 16 onward is a total crapshoot, based on the draw, based on who they could be potentially matched up with. That said, the stated aim of this team, the stated aim of the Qatari ownership has always been a focus on Europe. The domestic cups are a nice bonus. The league's a given. This is the focus. Paris Saint-Germain's season comes down to Wednesday, frankly, and I think that with that being the case, if this doesn't come off, you might have to look at the team starting to adapt and move on to a more sustainable long-term plan. I think that means moving on the likes of Thiago Motta. He was rumored to have been departing this summer, but ended up staying. Thankfully, I think he's had a fairly solid season. But again, he's 34 in the summer. How much longer can he continue to be an important player for a team with those sort of ambitions? Similarly for Ibrahimovic, if PSG don't seem to be progressing despite his decent form this season, again, you'd have to question, what are their plans moving on? I mean, you can look at the likes of someone like, say, Gonzalo Higuain, who's refusing to sign an extension at Napoli. That's a connection that PSG have mined twice before successfully. Could there be movement along those lines to sort of have a shift of focus on this project, to move away from some of these more veteran players and to develop this team into a more fluid attacking force, which they've oftentimes displayed this season. But if it comes down to it, this is another year in which they've come up short. And this time, being from a favored position. I mean, let's face it, they were underdogs against Chelsea last season, and they were underdogs against Barcelona, and when they got knocked out last season, and I think they performed creditably well. But it seems as if they don't go through, it's a real failing in terms of the weight of expectations, and that's what it comes down to. It's mental fortitude, and this team, seems to have struggled with that at certain times. They've been incredibly resilient, as exemplified by last year's round of 16 tie, but they also have seemed to crumble at inopportune occasions. Be it in the group stages a couple years ago against Porto, or against or the finishing from some players, since the likes of Cavani, and is it time to turn the page on some of these players? Cavani could include along with Mata and Ibrahimovic in that group, as to whether they're truly of the quality needed to make an impact in this competition year in and year out. I think a question over the reset button, if you will, needs to be asked. Should PSG not progress?
Finally, Christian, let's get maybe a little bit of a prediction. Do you think PSG have enough to beat Chelsea on Wednesday?
It's difficult because I think for different reasons and different scenarios, both of these two teams' seasons come down to this one evening. Having said that, I remain confident that Paris Saint-Germain will repeat the success that they repeated at Stamford Bridge last season, and I think they'll win outright the second leg 2-1.
Eric, how about yourself?
I think a 1-1 draw with PSG to go through.
That's quite an interesting one. I have a feeling that Chelsea's forms may be a little bit masked by poor performances by the opponents, maybe teams allowing them back into games, and I think it might be a nice, comfortable 2-0 win, especially if Diego Costa misses it. I can't see them really having enough going forward, so I will go with a reasonably comfortable victory in the end. But we'll wait and see. That'll be one to look forward to in the midweek. But while the title race...
To note, just one thing, Nathan, that if Paris Saint-Germain don't progress on Wednesday, French football's had an absolutely terrible season. Potentially one of the worst in 10 years in Europe.
Very true, and I'm pretty sure, especially if Benfica are playing Zenit, so if Paris Saint-Germain fall out, then we'll definitely have to have a talk about the potential backlash to the coefficient should they be eliminated at this stage with so many French teams leaving. But while the title race in Liga and even possibly second place looking wrapped up at this moment in time, the race for that final Champions League spot changes each week, and it's only been hotting up even more this week. 3 points separate the 5 frontrunners for that spot, and we'll have a look at each, but let's start with Lyon, who impressed yet again on Sunday, Eric, as they really smashed Guingamp. They have to be the favourites for that spot, don't they?
Even as a Lyon fan, I have to be a little bit hesitant about that. Nice struggled a little bit in Ben Arfa's absence. However, he's now back, and I still make Nice favorites. I think Lyon still have the occasional issues at the back. I mean, even though, yes, their win on paper was decisive, an own goal, shades of offside for 2 of the ones they did score. Lopez had to make a couple really brilliant saves. The result against Guingamp perhaps wasn't as decisive as some would like to paint it. It's good to see the team scoring goals because that breeds confidence in the players. And it's good to see the likes of a Serge Darder and a Clément Grenier finally showing a little bit more of what we know that they've been capable of in past seasons. But the fact remains, I'm not going to install Lyon as favorites at this point. I think that Nice have shown more consistency over the course of the season, and with the return of Ben Arfa, I would probably tip them as favorites. That said, Sunday's match at Rennes looms as an absolutely huge trip. If Lyon can get a result at the Eurozone, I would probably then make them favorites, being that they can show that kind of form against a team that is a direct rival. The result against PSG was incredibly impressive, but let's face it, PSG's minds are probably elsewhere at this point in the season. There's just been a real lack of consistency from this team in terms of a pointedness and a directness. I think the form of Cornet and Ghezal has been really impressive in this recent run. But again, these are still players who are relatively unproven and are kind of getting the benefit of the doubt. Cornet's goal on Sunday was just about the most circumstantial thing you could ever wish for, hitting both posts and barely trickling in. But still, I think for me they're playing attractive attacking football, which is what they need for their confidence. But I still make Nice the favorites.
Christian, I mean, it was a really impressive 5-1 result, and the attacking play, especially of Lyon, was on show. Do you think they really have enough to see off the rest of the competition with 9 games to go?
Well, first of all, can we just say how fantastic is this race? I mean, who could have thought that Caen, OGC Nice, well, I mean, you could argue that even with Nantes, with their game in hand, I know they got smashed on the weekend, but, who knows? What an incredible opportunity for so many clubs who would have never have thought they'd be in this position this time last year or even at the beginning of the season. The way I see it is that I think Lyon are favourites. I said a month ago that Lyon, for me, were going to take 3rd place. I think what we've seen at Lyon has been some tactical tweaks, some changes in personnel, but most importantly, there's a belief and a confidence about Lyon now, which separates them from Nice and Rennes, in my point of view. There's this very, very interesting brand of football that Lyon are now adopting, which is effectively, I mean, for want of a better phrase, all for one and one for all. The amount of pressing and tracking back that front three is doing against Paris Saint-Germain, but also against Guingamp at times. And I think it was Maxwell Cornet who made reference to it at the end of the game last weekend, saying that, what we'll do as much defending, our strikers will do as much defending as we need to if it helps the team. I think that's been very noticeable. But also the mentality's there. They're excited to play. They're excited to play with each other, and they have a bit of attacking rhythm going. And I think Mathieu Valbuena's absence has really, really helped that front three, because all of a sudden they are a front three. There's nobody necessarily in behind them immediately, and we can start to get some form of chemistry between Ghezal Cornet and Lacazette. So for me, Lyon are favourites now. Okay, 5-1, as Eric says, is perhaps unfair, especially in the first 20 minutes. It was all a bit of a crazy game. There could have been several goals for both sides within that first 20 or 25. But I think for Lyon, for me, are favourites. I think if you look at Nice and Rennes' problem is they're incredibly inconsistent. Roland Courbis is still not really settled on a formation. Our main problem with Philippe Montagnier, which I think we've all spoken about quite a lot on this show, is that he never really set himself on a formation or a starting 11. And if you can't do that within 2.5 years of being a manager at a club, then you really have to look yourself in the mirror and ask, what on earth is going on? And Rennes certainly made the right decision to sack him when they did. Courbis now needs to settle on something. Ousmane Dembélé will get the headlines because the truth is that he is that one differential that perhaps Rennes didn't have at the beginning of the season as he was being bedded in. I think defensively Rennes are not at all more confident having seen Courbis come in, and I think we'll see a series of inconsistent results from them as the season comes to a close. Nice were on a very, very bad run of form until the weekend when they played Troyes, and they only really edged past Troyes. Yes, they had a lot of possession. Yes, they had chances, but weren't incisive enough in the box. And to be honest with you, the 2-1 was in the end perhaps the right result, but by no means did Nice deserve any more than that 2-1, that one-goal advantage against a side who is basically already down. In fact, is all but mathematically down. Is not the type of performance Nice need. Having said that, there'll be a little bit of confidence from that win. I think they've got to recapture the away form that saw them beat Saint-Etienne, beat Rennes at the beginning of the season so emphatically. And if they can do that, then they'll run Lyon close. I think Saint-Etienne also can't be ruled out. I think the signings that they've made in January were exceptional, and hopefully they can get over their Europa League drama soon from a mental point of view and really kick on and potentially sneak that third place. But for me, if I was to order them, I think right now Lyon have the best chance. OGC Nice and Saint-Etienne probably equally have the second best chance at the moment, especially given Saint-Etienne's favourable run-in.
Well, let's carry on talking about some of those clubs, and just below Lyon at the moment, a point behind are Nice. And if any team, Eric, in this bunch should really have sealed it by now, it's probably Nice, who had an awful run of form in the last 4 or 5 games before that Troyes win. It must, if they still have a chance somehow, but if they don't get that third spot, or they could even fall to as low as 7th, like we're mentioning how many teams in there. If they miss out on Europe this season, is it a bit of a disappointment with where they've been and the amount of chances they've had to really pull away even from 3rd?
Yeah, I would say you'd have to class it as a disappointment. Given the comments that Claude Puel has made, we should probably safely assume that Atem Ben Arfa will be off in the summer. That being said, if this club can bring themselves into contention for the Champions League or direct entry into the group stage of the Europa League that comes along with 4th place, I think that perhaps he might reconsider. Perhaps he might see Nice with the academy that they have, with some of these exciting younger players, the likes of Aseri, Cosiello, Mendy, as being perhaps he can be the veteran leader of a really exciting team that play attractive attacking football. Now, there's still a lot of potential for growth. I mean, I'd add Alassane Playa into that as well. Perhaps Nice can make the loan signing of the likes of Germain or Ricardo Pereira permanent. There's a lot of potential here. But as you rightly mentioned, given how open Ligue 1 is, and really I'd include Monaco in this discussion as well, even though they probably do have second place sewn up given their defensive strength. For Nice not to be grasping the brass ring, as it were, given some of the results that they've had lately, particularly the loss to Bastia last weekend, was just really abject. It's hard to give them a real amount of credit, given how many opportunities they've had to pull away. I mean, not being able to score against Bordeaux have been frankly awful defensively in the past 2 months or so, and losing to Bastia, not even being able to get a draw. I know Bastia are a strong defensive team, but to concede that, to have that sort of result against them is, that to me is really what things boil down to. If you could give them another 3 or 4 points over the last couple weeks, then they'd be clear in third, and then they would be a more objective favorite. Personally, again, I still make them favorites. The next 2 matches are away to Montpellier and at home to Gazlec. Pick up 6 points there, and Lyon have a tougher pair of fixtures, going away to Rennes and hosting Nantes, and things could look a lot different heading to the international break. So before I think we can be as definitive as we'd like in terms of anointing Lyon the favorites, I'd like to see how the next couple weeks play out personally.
I think Eric is just being, doesn't want to believe it. He's not getting his hopes up with this third place. I mean, Eric, come on, man for man, this Nice team at the beginning of the season, nobody had them anywhere near this top 5, which they're fighting for. I think they are probably the biggest surprise of all the surprises we've had this season. Angers have quite predictably fallen off the face of the earth after the January transfer window. But Nice have somehow managed to, just about keep that form going. But some of these players are not good. They're really not particularly good players. The likes of Mathieu Bodmer at the back, Paul Bice has been, overperforming. In the last few games, Jeremy Pierre, the right winger, a man who played right wing for 5 years, is consistently playing left back. The midfield is incredibly inexperienced. Only since the arrival of Alessandro Plea back from injury a couple of games ago, have Nice been playing with Dorian Caddy, who's about 18 years old, starting games. It's incredible how many uncovered youth players have really come to the fore and not played particularly well. Nice have been winning because of an ability to maintain the ball, not because of individuals who can produce anything special. I mean, apart from the odd mystical Valère Germain run into the box, or a Hatem Ben Arfa dribble, the last 3 or 4 months have been very, very difficult, and it's been about grinding out results for Nice, simply due to the philosophy that they've got. So, I mean, I think it'd be a nice story if Nice take third place, but I don't think it's particularly realistic. And I'd love to be proved wrong, because I think it would be a fantastic advert for Liga and the Champions League. Having said that, maybe they would fare better in the Europa League and have a more realistic chance in that competition next season.
I certainly agree with that.
Yeah, but I think Eric makes good points that there is actually quite a lot at stake for Nice if they can't grab the Champions League, because Ben Arfa might consider to stay, but also Valère Germain might consider to join permanently, and that'd be a great coup for Nice, etc. So yeah, I mean, I think Eric is just not making sure he doesn't tempt fate by predicting Lyon.
No, I think, Christian, I'm honestly looking at the next 2 matches. It's entirely conceivable Lyon can get no points from those and Nice can get 6. We could be looking at this from a very different perspective come the international break. You've got to admit the fixture list is very kind to Nice in the next 2 weeks and very difficult for Lyon.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely fair. I just believe that if we look at the final set of fixtures, Nice have still got a fairly difficult road, which includes going to the Parc des Princes.
No, I don't disagree with that. I mean, they're away to Lyon, they're away to Nantes. Yeah.
I'll be the adjudicator in saying that I think Nice is cooked. I watched the game against Bordeaux. I watched the game against Bastia, and I wouldn't ever recommend, unless you like torture, don't watch that Bordeaux game, because it was utterly abysmal. And it was a game that a team that can get it was such a game for the taking of one player to just nick a goal, and a goal for Nice would have won that game, because Bordeaux was somewhere else. I don't know where they were. And then the first half of the Bastia game was the same. It was an awful game that Nice probably should have scored, and then a silly sending off, and they score from the free kick. and then game over. But even
this is the thing that I mean. There's very little individual quality in this list. I mean, you referenced the Bordeaux game. How many good positions were Nice in? A player, I think it was Player's first game back from injury. Yeah. Horrible. A player has been horrible since he's come back from injury. Absolutely terrible. And anyway, that's my rant for the day.
And like I said, those two games and the Marseille game, especially like they drew with Marseille. Okay, fair enough. They've got that Bordeaux game, and they kept dropping points, and everyone else would drop points. And then you'd think this was such an opportunity for them to just like pull a good fair distance away. And even if they fell apart with those difficult games later on against PSG, Lyon, they've still got to play Nantes away. They've still got to play Saint-Etienne as well, which is never easy. They could have quite easily been in a sort of really comfortable Europa League place at the minimum. But let's move on to another club now before we start ranting a little bit too much. And Eric, I want to get your thoughts on Rennes. Christian's already mentioned that they can't decide what kind of team they want to be, but they're in and around again. And in a player like Ousmane Dembélé, who's an absolutely wonderful footballer to watch, they've got half a chance, haven't they?
Yeah, I mean we've seen. I mean, look at Monaco's rise up the table to third place last year. We've seen how Ligue 1 can be so tightly balanced in such a defensively dour and solid league that if you have one incandescent young talent, be that Anthony Martial in last season's run-in, or not necessarily young, be that Max-Alain Gradel for Saint-Etienne down the stretch last season, one brilliant attacking player in form is enough to make the difference in this league. And for that reason, I don't think you can really count Rennes out. Again, this Sunday's match against Lyon is huge, but should they be able to get a result against Legon, it's anybody's match. I mean, it looks like at the very least Corby has settled on a 4-2-3-1. He's brought in the likes of Mbengue and Danze again, who'd been ill or little used by Montagnier, particularly this season. He's made Dembélé an automatic starter, and the loss of Intep, who I had tipped earlier in the season to have the potential to be a real difference and secure a place in Euro 2016 for himself. That could have been potentially catastrophic loss, but he has really not been missed. Even with misfiring strikers for the likes of Sio, they've gotten decent wing play from the likes of Grosicki. Pedro Henrique has been good in spots as well. And it looks like this team is finally coalescing into something that makes sense. There's still some issues at the back. There's still some issues with finishing. But I think the appointment of Corbis is looking more and more like a masterstroke, despite the past achievements of Montagnier in Spain.
And I have to admit, if you are listening, if you've not seen Ousmane Dembélé play, go watch this lad play, because it is really wonderful to watch a young player play with such freedom. I always really enjoy, especially wingers, play with such freedom and such attacking intent. He's got a lot of ability, and there's a reason why there was about 8 or 9 different clubs watching the game at the weekend, and they were probably all wowed by what we've seen all season, really, from the youngster, because he's been absolutely sensational. But another club we've not really mentioned, Christian, is Caen, who managed to come. I thought they were dead on Friday evening against Monaco, but they managed to claw out a draw that keeps them just about in the hunt as well. Do they not upset the odds? Do you not think they've got enough?
Sure, just on Dembélé, I'd like to exercise a bit of caution again. Look, this is a really, really talented player, yes, but let's not shout about it. Let's whisper it, because all that happens is that individuals like Dembélé, especially how young he is, he's 18. It's just going to go. It might not go to his head, but there's a danger that it goes to his head. So let's not shout about it, and let's hope Barcelona don't come to the Rosen Park again, and hopefully this player can get a good, thorough development here in France for 3 or 4 years before he's snapped up. But I agree. Behind closed doors, has been fantastic. From a Caen point of view, I'd love to give them a chance. I'd love to pretend that I think they can do it. I just don't see it. I think that Delors, since probably the January transfer window, has not performed consistently as he did in the first half of the season. And that's fundamentally why Caen sort of dropped off a little bit. You'll remember that they were third or fourth along with Angers for a time, quite consistently for a couple of months. And that's why they sort of dropped off. I thought the character that they showed against Monaco on the weekend was excellent, Nathan. I have to agree there. But I just don't see it happening for Caen.
I'll give you 8 reasons at the moment why they might do it. Well, 9, in fact, for Eric. You can follow on from this. This might be a little bit difficult, but they face, in the next 9 games, they have a Gazalec, Troyes, Toulouse, Lorient, PSG, Guingamp, Bastia, Nantes, Bordeaux. That's feasible that they could be still a contender even this late in the season, isn't it? They're not a difficult set of games other than the trip to the Parc des Princes.
No, you're absolutely right. I just, I think, as Christian rightly says, the drop-off in form from Delors is a real worry. Ronnie Rodelan's chipped in with 7 goals, but the fact is, without Delors at his best, Caen really don't have a secondary source for goals. We've seen the odd goal from Intabazon.
Intabazon Kiza, that's it. There we go. I know my mind.
Yeah, but I mean, it's not just him. I mean, Hervé Basile has been not at his best this season either. Kouakou scored a nice goal the other day, but I mean, he's really yet to make that much of an impact since his arrival from Tours. And there's not a goal scoring option other than Delors and Rodelan kicking in the odd goal, and that for me is the real worry. I mean, Caen have been more attractive and more solid at the back this season. Yes, that's true, but I feel like a lot of their placement is down simply to an inconsistent run of form from most other teams that are around them in the table. It's an improved Caen, yes, but is it really on the level that they're going to be a true contender for the Champions League fixtures? Yes or no? I just don't see it. Perhaps they could sneak into 6th or 5th come the end of the season. Again, given their running, it's certainly a possibility. But I think as a true contender for the Champions League, I just really don't see that they've got the weapons to do that.
Nathan, I've got an alternative theory about Caen's last or run-in, as you sort of mentioned it.
Go ahead.
Caen have been successful this season because of their counter-attacking style of play. Now, the vast majority of teams that they are going to be facing are sides that are not necessarily going to go all out. And they're therefore sides that are not very easy to exploit on the counter-attack. So I don't think that the quote-unquote easier run-in on paper necessarily translates into more points for Caen. Second of all, what on earth are Caen feeding Ronnie Rodelan this season? I mean, he's been fantastic. I don't understand. He was terrible at Lille. Was picked up by a new agent in the summer, and then all of a sudden he's been really, really very good. I don't know if either of you have a view on that, but I'm not entirely sure. Why? How? Anyway.
He has been much better than I've ever seen Ronnie Rodelan, and that's...
I think...
Go ahead.
I mean, sorry, I was going to say, I think he's just being used better. I mean, he's a fantastic header of the ball, and, to have him be an outlet for a long ball from the likes of Sub or Ferre, I think it just makes... He's just being used better. We didn't see that kind of play as much from Lille. I mean, yeah, Florent Beaumont's wanted to play the ball over the top as well, but the fact that he's able to be used in the system with more attacking fullbacks, the likes of Bessa and Imoru and Apia, I think it's just a more cohesive system for him, and also to have a more of a proper striker alongside him in terms of Andy Delors. I mean, yes, Lille had Nolan Roux last year, but again, Rodelan wasn't consistently featuring for Les Dogs last year, and I think that the system just fits him a lot better. I think Garand has really been using these players really well. I think honestly the only player that I would maybe take to task, and it's had a little bit of a drop off from last season, is Basile, because I think he's really wrung the best out of basically all these players, and Rodelan's just a good example of that. Basile, no goals this season, 7 last year. Just as an example there, that's a really precipitative drop-off. I know he struggled a little bit with injury, but still, if it weren't for Rodelan, you kind of wonder where Caen would be at this point in time.
It's, like we say, it's been an incredible season for them, and to say that the perfect example of expressing Caen in one go is that they've had 13 wins and they've had 12 losses and 4 draws. So it's all or nothing for Caen, and that's always great to see a team do that. And the last sort of club, while we mentioned that Nantes with a win in their game in hand might see them be involved as well, but Saint-Etienne are still in and around there, and Christian, they're the kind of team that will possibly sneak into being maybe the biggest challengers to Lyon in the end, might they?
Well, first of all, I just want to say I was absolutely furious with the way Christophe Galtier reacted to that goal that they scored when they thought they'd won it against Basel 10 days ago. I mean, what a stupid thing to do. And it just makes a mockery of how we're perceived, or how French football is perceived in Europe. It's as if you sort of won the World Cup and then invariably tempts fate there. And I hope that actually that result psychologically, as I said before, does not weigh too much on Saint-Etienne, because I think in terms of a squad in its entirety, I think this might be the biggest chance that Galtier has at a Champions League spot. As we've said, they recruited very well in January, the likes of Soderlund, Tanane, I don't know how you say it, but
Tanane, I believe.
He's been excellent, and he looks a real find if they can make sure he doesn't get too hot-tempered. So they've got the tools, Saint-Etienne, to do it. They're going to need to rely on other clubs to sort of perform less well than expected in the coming weeks, specifically for Lyon. But I think in terms of a squad, they've got perhaps the fourth best squad man for man in the division, and that therefore gives them a very good chance of sneaking that last Champions League spot.
Eric, do you fear that Les Verts might be that team that is maybe the most potent challenge to Lyon, even though they have not been quite at the races as much as they usually are the last couple of weeks, but they're that kind of team that could probably grind out 1-0 wins and pose a real challenge?
Yeah, I mean, we saw this down the season. Let's remember, this is a team that finished level on points with Marseille last season. We're fifth on goal difference, and we're only 3 points off the Champions League last year. And as Christian rightly says, they've done fabulously well in the transfer market, both in the summer, bringing in the likes of Beric, Acerich, Neil Mopai, and the winter arrivals have been great as well. I mean, Soderlund, Tanan, and Selnice, I think, are fantastic. Tabanu on loan. They've been a lot more aggressive in the market, and things have come off. I mean, we think about the likes of a Ricky Van Wolfswinkel last season, players that just really weren't at the races. Saint-Etienne haven't had the best luck with strikers in the recent past, but in Soderlund in particular, they seem to really have a better handle on things attacking wise. And in the past, when we've seen Saint-Etienne do well, it's been Aubameyang 3 seasons ago, and it's been Gradel last year. If Soderlund or Tanan can become that sort of transcendent player who is able to get you a goal most matches, that's enough for Saint-Etienne to really go on a run. That being said, the fact that they sit in 7th right now means that with 9 matches to go, there's a lot of teams over which they have to climb to really make this happen. But they're always going to be dangerous. You can't rule them out of any match. So I think honestly, for me, it's something down to a matter of regret. That they have had such fixture congestion that they've been sort of hamstrung by the injury of Loic Perrin not being available for the last month. He did make the bench on Saturday against Angers, but didn't feature. So he's probably set to come back next weekend. But the cup run that they made and the Europa League fixtures have really, I think, perhaps exhausted these players emotionally, given the manner in which they lost to Basel, and physically as well, given how many fixtures they've had to play since the beginning of the calendar year. So it's a situation of frustration. The talent, the squad depth is there, but the players really have to look within themselves to kick on to yet another level after what their mental states are at this point. And I sort of have my doubts about whether they can do that. and so I think that's where I stand on Saint-Etienne, is that I think that particularly that domestic cup run was probably not the best thing for them in the end.
And well, this is the kind of thing that will run and run, hopefully, until the end of the season. It'll be great to see maybe even 3 or 4 teams still within a chance, and that final day, that'll be really, really interesting to watch. But we mentioned Nantes then having a game in hand, and that, unfortunately for them, is against Bastia, who fired Ghislain Priton and signed Francois Cicilline a couple of months ago. But the Corsicans since then have won 4 of their last 6 with 5 clean sheets. How have things turned around for them, Christian?
Well, I think it's a fantastic result for Ligue 1. I think this is now a club that's very well established in the league, and I think their fiery atmosphere, their constant run-ins with the LFP disciplinary committee would be missed if they'd been relegated this season. So it looks like they're pretty much assured safety. I think they're 1 point from 40 points, and in this division it's usually about 42 points is certainly enough to stay up. So I think they're as good as safe. And what's really incredible about this is the squad year after year has got worse and worse in terms of quality, and now Bastia are focusing on the youngsters, on the likes of Seko Fofana, who's currently suspended but has been very important for them during the season. I think really what we've seen is the 2 wider players, Nathan, Floyd Ayite and Gael Danic, really step up to the level that we know they can play at. But they're both on excellent runs of form, and I think both well, Danic was nearly involved. I think he hit the post on the weekend against Lorient during that 0-0 draw, and of course Floyd Ayite scored against Nice the weekend prior to this. So we've got basically it's a tale of good belief in youth, in a belief in a squad that hasn't really got any internal issues, simply because there are not many players that Bastia really have available to them. The squad is very tight-knit, very thin, and we're seeing the more experienced and established players perform to the levels that we've seen in previous years. And also, of course, we have to mention their home form. They remain the 3rd best team at home this season, and for a side that's usually competing in a relegation battle, I think that's the major factor. They've really made use of that intimidating atmosphere in the Furiani.
That's an excellent point, but the really positive thing, Eric, for the last couple of weeks is not only are they keeping clean sheets against solid teams, but they're also finally finding ways of winning away, aren't they? I mean, they've beat Reims and Nice in recent weeks as well.
Yeah, the last time I watched Bastia was their victory against Lyon, and they were really impressive. I mean, the physicality of Brandao and how his play allows movement for the likes of Ayite and Danic and even Kamano when he plays as well is really impressive. I think that this for me is a sustainable model. Whether it's with Brandao or some other similarly physical big striker next season, I'm not sure what Brandao's plans are given his age and whatnot. But it seems that Cicilline's really got this team dialed into a style that makes sense. Now, again, how sustainable this is going to be year after year is a question, given the age of much of the squad. But I think for me, I remember after seeing the result of Bastia's win over Nice, this Ligue 1 needs this team for me. I think that the excitement and the energy that they provide is a great advertisement for the league, and not only that, but for how much this team means to the city and to indeed the Isle of Corsica. I mean, I know that the likes of Gazalec and the other Ajaccio club have been in Liga in recent seasons, but the hope that this team has been given the impact that this team has culturally for Corsica can't be understated either. The surge of feelings they felt reaching the League Cup final last year was really impressive, and for that match to go the way it did, I think was incredibly disappointing given the result that they had against PSG prior to that. And I felt at the time initially that the dismissal of Printemps was a little bit unfair. But now, 5-6 matches into Cicilline's reign, they have picked up an improvement, and it's the team seems to allow that same level of hard workiness, but they've got a bit more dynamism going forward, and that, it's hard to argue that that wasn't the missing ingredient for this club. So, well done to this new manager. It's taken me by surprise personally, and but I can't say it's a disappointment given how much I generally value a club like Bastia being in Liga.
It has been a really terrific run of recent. I mean, they've struggled to score goals, but keeping other teams out has really lifted them. I mean, a win against Nantes, I think, is it in midweek that they play against each other? Yes, it is. A win puts them above Nantes, who went on a 17-game unbeaten run in all competitions. That's how good this recent run has been for Bastia, really. And even more annoyingly, it puts them 4 points behind Lyon, which, throws them maybe into a Champions League race, which is what Liga has been about this season, hasn't it, Christian? That teams can all of a sudden put an half-decent run get together, and then they could be fighting for the top spots.
Can you imagine SC Bastia in Europe? Oh dear. Yeah, well, no, I have to echo a lot of Eric's sentiments. I agree. I think it's nice to see there's certain clubs whose fans, care enough to turn up to the match, but perhaps not in great numbers. This is an island, a sort of community which really needs and values its football club. Football is the main sport on the island of Corsica, and Bastia have become that flagship club for Corsican football. Just a little bit more on why they've been successful. I think the veterans and the experienced players have really, really stepped up at a difficult time, because when Printemps left, they were very, very much in danger of relegation. And because of the outlook and landscape of the relegation battle emerging in Ligue 1 this season, it's quite clear that there are not going to be that many teams involved. It's almost more of a foregone conclusion now that Toulouse will join Troyes in Ligue 2. I mean, barring some incredible Dupraz-led miracle for Toulouse, I just don't think they have it in them. And then it looks like it's going to be between Gazélec, Reims and Guingamp, maybe, for the final relegation spot. So SC Bastia knew that relegation battle wouldn't be as tightly contested because other things higher up the pitch are more tightly contested this season. So, important big players like the likes of Sebastian Squillaci, like the likes of Julien Palmieri, who's been such a stalwart for the club, and he had an offer from Lille actually in January. He could have left. His contract expires at the end of the season, but he decided to stay and fight with SC Bastia. And someone like Palmieri, who often loses his head, often has been on the side of a red card or two in recent times, but really exemplifies that that never expunging passion that SC Bastia as a club and as a football team every Saturday, because usually they only ever play on Saturday, has and embodies. I think it's fantastic.
Because I'm trying to imagine, much like those scenes we saw before the cup final last season, that a boat almost on fire going around Europe might put the fear in some teams if they did manage to make the European places. But it's great to see them doing well, and I can't imagine that anyone could be thinking of them reaching Europe. But it's nice that at least you can think about that a little bit more. And you mentioned that. Sorry, carry on.
Sorry. Well, I was just going to say, you have to think about their disciplinary issues too. They've received 9 red cards. I think 2 of those were in the same match, but were they a little bit better disciplined, and they had 6 more points, they would be right in that mix. And the way the Guingamp played, I'd love to see Bastia in Europe personally. I think that'd be a great fun.
And like you mentioned, Eric, that disciplinary record mentions exactly why they probably thought they needed some change from Printemps to someone like Cicilline, who's clearly brought an organisation to their defence, because no one other than Monaco has scored past them. I mean, Lyon never looked like they could. I think you might agree with me. It never looked quite like Lyon would score. And I watched the game against Nice, and they weren't exactly knocking on the door. Bastia held really well, and then Nice made a terrible mistake for the red card, and Bastia seized on any counter attack in that game. Looked like Bastia were going to increase the lead, but
I hate to burst the bubble, but I do think if they are going to do anything vaguely impressive in the top 10, it's going to be this season, because the league table is incredibly tight in those top spots, as we've been talking about at length today. But also, I think a lot of these players, this is the last year really, where we're going to see Squillaci at this level, where we're going to see Brandao at this level, even maybe where we're going to see Danic at this level. And I think Flora Yite has been flirting with leaving the club for a long time now. So, this could be it or never, really, for Sebastian.
And then does the renaissance happen next season? That's the real issue. Is can they do it again? That's all for this week. Now, before my thanks to Eric and for Christian for joining me, and all of you listening at home this evening. Abianto and goodbye.